Once upon a time, there was a man named Todd Smith. Todd was married to Elizabeth, and they had 2 children, Brody and Lucy. Lucy and Brody's father was addicted to alcohol. Every day, Todd would get up, start drinking, and before he knew it, it was nighttime and he'd been drinking all day. He lost his job as an engineer after his boss found him drunk on the job. Oftentimes, Brody would come home from school and see his dad passed out on the couch. The house was very chaotic most of the time and filled with yelling and fighting over pointless matters. As Brody grew older, he began to skip school more and more. His parents never encouraged him to do well in school, so he doubted he'd ever be a successful student, although he had much potential. The lack of self-esteem in himself made him make poor choices. He didn't turn in assignments and often talked back to the teacher. Children need to feel important, and Brody sadly never did. He always felt as if his dad stole the spotlight in his life. As Brody was struggling with school and his grades, he couldn't go to his parents because they weren't emotionally there for him. They may have put food on the table and provided a house for him and his sister, but they didn't listen to his worries, fears, or pay attention to his needs. As Todd and Elizabeth rejected his feelings, Brody failed to develop a trust. This led him to believe that if he couldn't trust his own parents, who in the world could he ever trust? No one, he thought. Paying full attention to children is important because they are completely dependent on their parents. When the children's needs aren't met, they begin to mistrust the people around them. Sometimes Brody felt like somehow he could have prevented his dad from being the way he is. Did he not try hard enough, or did he not try in the right way to change him? As Brody took responsibility for his father, Todd persisted with the addiction because he didn't see that he's the only one responsible for his recovery. When parents have drinking problems, they put themselves at the center of attention instead of their children, forcing the kids to be robbed from their unconditional love they should be shown. As Brody grew up, he worried a lot about his sister Lucy. He found himself stepping into a father figure for her. The essential boundaries in their families were blurred. A high schooler taking care of his younger sister when he's supposed to be at football games, on student council, or studying for a test. He was only trying to hide the realities of his dad's addiction from the outside world. As the school days would come and go, Brody would hear a lot of talk about parties and drinking. Although society says drinking is bad, Brody developed his own thoughts and views on the topic from the influence of his parents. He didn't see it as a big deal because he had been surrounded by that his whole life, and he saw alcohol as a way to block out the rest of the world. Brody lived with the knowledge that his dad was engaging in abnormal and unhealthy decisions, but felt like he needed to stick up for his father and somehow prove that what he's doing was okay. As Brody and Lucy grew up, the things they learned about life were set through the interactions at home and school. The culture they were raised in determined how their knowledge was formed. Since arguing, lack of communication, and moodiness were all they were surrounded by, that's the kind of people they have grown up to become. Parents are one of the largest aspects in a learning environment, and when their father relied on alcohol, that's all they believed was dependable in life too. So sadly, it wasn't a big surprise that Brody became involved with people that believed the same things as him. In late high school, he began experimenting with drugs and alcohol on the weekends. Brody partied more and more until it got so extreme that he quit school altogether. Dropping out of school meant no job and no future. The only thing he could rely on was alcohol, just like his father. One day, his friend found him laying on the ground outside his house. His friend rushed him to the hospital where he was treated for alcohol poisoning. From that day on, Brody's mother made him seek help. He saw a psychologist who helped him understand his problem with alcohol and why he made the choices he did. By understanding the concept, he learned how to cope with his own problems and stop blaming himself for the problems and failures of his father. Brody joined an aftercare program, Alcoholics Anonymous, in order to encourage him to stay away from drinking. He was able to talk about his lifestyle changes and prevent relapses. After he realized the effects that counseling had on him, he invited his dad to join AA. Todd was apprehensive at first, but after a lot of nagging from Elizabeth and Brody, he joined AA. Todd spoke about his long-term addiction and admitted to his faults. After years of treatment, Todd is sober and is trying to work on his relationship with his 2 children and wife.